Hey guys, I hope everybody's having a fantastic day, whether you're watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening. I'm just glad you're here. I want to take a quick shout out second and say thank you to the channel members. I want to say thank you to anyone who's taken the time to subscribe. And I want to say thank you to anyone who just comes in here and takes time out of your day to check out my knife and EDC content. I really appreciate it. So the thumbnail kind of explains what we're going to be talking about today. It's going to be my favorite and what I consider by a long shot the Sliciest USA manufacturer in the game that I'm aware of. And that is Three Rivers Manufacturing, TRM. And I was going to do a quick run through and talk about the sliciness and what made these knives hold such a special place in my heart. Kind of starting with the first one that I got, which was the Neutron 2 here. I traded for this knife. I traded a knife plus some cash. It did not come with titanium scales. I updated it. The TRM Neutron is their, I would call it kind of a mid-size, medium-sized knife, bug-out size maybe. It's going to come in right at 7 inches. So for me, it's a perfect EDC size. Very, very svelte. Svelte, for those of you that don't read the dictionary, means slim. This guy, its scales, comes in at only 0.39 inches. And the blade stock that we're working with is 0.0890. So these knives, in particular, the first two that we're going to look at, which were the first two that I brought into my collection. We're just going to kind of run through the gamut. Shouldn't take us too long. But blade geometry, blade geometry, blade geometry. These guys are so thin that they are, in my opinion, the best slicers in my collection. Lock bar, that's titanium. Scales that I added that are titanium, a blade that's 20 CV, titanium clip, and one thing about TRM, Three Rivers Manufacturing, is everything from each screw to each part is sourced or made by them right here in the USA. So to me, that's a cool thing. The only thing that they don't do here, and they list it on their website, is anytime you get carbon fiber scales, those come from Lithuania. But they're also, on top of being like the Sliciest nice company, I think they're one of the kindest. They're definitely the most generous. They're fantastic people. They do a lot for causes around the community that go unsung because they do it silently. But trust me, they're worth the investment not only in the hardware, but in the people. So this is the TRM Neutron, which was my first TRM. It was a knife that I'd wanted for a long time and then finally was able to trade for it. Loved it. And then wanted to attain its bigger brother. Keep in mind, when I obtained all these, they either had a micarta scale, G10 scales. Most of those I've gifted to other people because I eventually upgraded to titanium scales for most of my TRMs. And once you go to titanium, it's kind of hard for me to go back. Even though I have some, not remorse, but I do like making it light because these scales are so easy to swap out. That's one of the things, and I'm sure all of y'all know that, but if there are one or two of you watching this that aren't that familiar with Three Rivers Manufacturing, one of their unique things that they do that no one else I'm aware of does, or at least no USA manufacturer, and they were the first to do it, is they make their scales, and they sell extra scales, very easy to remove. So you do not have to take the pivot out to remove these scales. On this one, you do have to take the clip and the body screw, but this knife will operate just on liners. So you don't even need the scales. The scales are purely decorative and, of course, ergonomic, but I thought that was really cool. So I had a whole bunch of different micarta scales I would go through because not anymore because I'm not really in the position, but was a dopamine freak where I always had to have something early on coming in transit knife-wise. So it was very economical to just buy a $40 set of scales when they drop, and change up the look to my either Atom, Neutron, some of the others we'll see. So that is the Atom. The Atom is the same exact knife as the Neutron in terms of build quality, titanium, 20 CV, same blade stock thickness, same handle thickness, same titanium clip, a little bit different style. The difference here is it is going to be a larger knife. It is going to clock in at, instead of 7 inches, it is going to come in at 8 inches. So it's an inch longer. If we look at them side by side, and I didn't measure the blades because these aren't really, they're individual knife reviews on each of these on my channel, if y'all want to really dive into them. But the blade on the Neutron is 3 inches. It's 3.5 on the Atom. The handle's roughly 4 versus, say, roughly 4 3/4. And those dimensions are off by, could be as much as 1/4 of an inch. Hell, I don't know. But that is the Neutron and the Atom. Those were the first two TRMs. They're on washers, and those are the first two that I picked up. A little while went along, and another knife that they offered, because I think I have the entire nest except for the first knife they released. But this is their Gen 1 TRM Nerd. The TRM Nerd is a unique little knife. This has the micarta scales on it. I could buy titanium scales for this, but I don't need to, and I'll show you why in a second. But this one, I have a hard time reverse finger flicking it because you've just got this little divot. And one of the things that TRM does is they have a gallery on their website. So they kind of solicit people to show their knives, show what they've done to their knives, custom scales, mods and stuff. And what became kind of a reoccurring theme where people were dremeling or drilling out this indentation to make it an actual thumb hole. And then it made it, it's on washers, so it's going to be, to me, this is the perfect 5th pocket carry knife. You can slow roll it out. It is super thin, same thin blade stock we were looking at before, but you've got a taller flat ground blade, same thickness and scales, even though this knife's much lighter because it is riding on micarta instead of titanium. I went into a therapeutic slicing trance. But this is the little Nerd. It's a great 5th pocket carry knife or small office knife. You know, if you don't need a full-size knife and you just need something that's going to be able to cut what I cut 90% of the time, packages, cord, tape, stuff like that. The little Nerd is a great knife. I can't recommend any of these knives enough. They're just all different, and that's because once I started to experience the brand and get more into it, I really became a true fan. So I'm going to jump ahead in knives that came in. I was getting ready to go to the Nashville Blade Show last year, and I'd been talking to some of the gals that worked the shows at TRM, and I was going to buy a set of titanium scales for this little 20 CV Nerd. And I had a 20 CV Holy Nerd that I've since sold, but I got a DM saying that one of these was in stock from one of the TRM gals, and if I wanted to grab it early, I could. And this one is an actual Holy Nerd in MagnaCut. This is their upgraded, when they moved for you to MagnaCut. Going to be the same dimensions as the Nerd that we were just looking at. The only thing difference here is this is the Holy Nerd. So you've got your blade hole on washers, and it's a small knife, so it's not the easiest to reverse flick, but you can, and it's an absolute laser beam. Again, for whether it's a 5th carry knife, a backup knife, a knife that you would normally carry a slip joint, but this is a locking knife, titanium liner, same makeup, same basic, I would call it lineage as the Neutron and the Atom, in that you can take these two screws out and simply replace the scales. I could take 5 minutes. I don't want to waste your time, and I could switch these scales with the other Nerd. It's that simple. But the Nerd is great. I was finally able to obtain one in titanium without having to get the scales and put them on my 20CV Nerd. And then was able to hook a friend up with my 20CV Nerd for a really good price, so it was a win-win. Moving on, my Grail, or at the time, my Grail TRM was always the TRM Shadow. I'm not a Riverlock or Barlock guy normally, but this knife, which, by the way, they now make in titanium. This is the only knife, and the Bulldog, which we'll look at in a second, that you cannot buy titanium scales for. Now, you can get this knife in limited titanium drops that you see at Blade Show, but they don't sell replacement scales because it's a little bit more, I guess, involved than a Benchmade, and they just don't want the hassle. So I'm not mad about it. This knife's light. This knife is a knife that, as far as TRMs go, probably gets the most pocket time. I carry it probably the most. It is, to me, the perfect size knife, and it's got that same blade profile as the Nerd, that tall, flat grind. This is right at a little over 7.5 inches, right? With a 3-inch blade, we'll call it, and a little bit over 3-inch, a little over 3-inch cutting area, 3 1/8 inch blade. And then your inside dimension to this choil is right, I'm going to call it 4 1/8 to be comfortable. The inside grip here is 3 1/4 to be comfortable. But this knife is comfortable. To me, whether I hold it here, which I don't, I hold it right here because it keeps me from trapping any material. It fits my hand perfectly. As far as bar locks go, the Riverlock is probably as well tuned as any that I've experienced. Vosti does a really good job. Benchmade made it happen. They envisioned it, but it's probably, you know, I think they could take some cues from people who have improved on it. But the Shadow, guys, 20CV. And please, if I've missed an overall Sliciest USA manufacturer, let me know in the comments. And I'm not talking about a manufacturer that has one Slicey knife. Granted, if you find one that does, let me know, because I'd like to try to buy it at some point. But the TRM Shadow is amazing. I love it. Again, it is probably my most carried TRM. It has that same super thin blade stock, 0.915. The handle's a little bit thicker, 0.48, but still very thin, very slicey, and to me, very elegant. Very well done. I love it. This is G10, and it just works very, very well. So moving on, I had a chance to do a kind of a three-way trade that had my buddy Pocket Metal involved in it. And it was a pleasure to get a knife that he kind of wanted. He'd had an opportunity to trade for this, which is a knife that's no longer in production by TRM. And this is their little slip joint, the TRM Atlas. It was a knife I was never interested in when it was familiar. I know it looks cocked, but it's locked up. That's the way it looks. That's the way it holds. And I'll show you why, because it's a perfect little cutter. And it is not a double detent. It really is a slip joint. So if I take this scale off, which I guess this would be a good reason to real quickly take a scale off to show you that instead of having a solid slip joint bar back there, it has two titanium, but they work just like a traditional slip joint. Even though the half stop's not perfectly 90 degrees, you'll see here that you've got this cut in to both frames. So when I go to start that, it pushes the frame back. And then it locks right there in that little groove. And then when I go to close it, it does the same thing and then flushes back up here. So you can see the spring, actually two springs that are cut in move. and then it locks open. So the TRM Atlas, I really wanted to have in the collection. I'll be honest, I don't carry it a ton. It is, I probably need to take it apart and do some maintenance around the pivot. I always think that's a place that you kind of got to watch out for in terms of corrosion and stuff. And I saw some dirt, crap gets in there. It's just, in my opinion, good to clean it out. So the TRM Atlas, not available through TRM anymore, but you can find them on the secondary. They are, kind of has a hybrid shaped blade, not exactly like the Atom Neutron family, not exactly like the Nerd and like the Shadow, but equally is Slicey. I mean, guys, these little knives are laser beams. So that is the TRM Atlas slip joint. That's your half stop, or what they call half, perfectly flush now, and that's your close position. It does have a flipper tab, but you can't flip it open. You can only flip it halfway, but you can thumb roll it the rest of the way. So very easy to manipulate, very neat one-handed slip joint, if you want to call it that. I do better when I just reverse flick it to halfway open. So if I take this knife, and I deserve to cut myself right here, but if I get it to right there and then pop it open, I can do it with one hand. But it's always best to use two. So that is the TRM Atlas, super thin, super slicey, USA made. I love it. And that brings us to my most recent and final folder, and a folder that they actually sent me to review, which I thought was super, super nice of them. And it's different in several different ways. And it's rapidly become one of my favorites. So it's going to be a little bit thicker. It's going to be still super slicey, thinner than most knives that we look at, but it uses the same river lock that the Shadow uses. You've got this G10 that almost has a micarta texture. Some of the finest feeling, best texture G10 I've felt. Very nice bevels around all the edges. You've got a Magna Cut blade that is the thickest blade stock, according to TRM and their website, and my calipers that they've employed. So it's a harder use knife. Again, the river lock / bar lock is very, very thick. So this is 0.1220, 0.1225, where we were well under that earlier, but it comes down with that flat ground Magna Cut blade to a very, very keen edge. So this guy, even it being thicker, you've got these G10 handles, this nice G10 backspacer, beautiful lock assembly. And when you take these knives apart and when you look at them, and you've taken apart Benchmades and you've taken apart other bar style locks, you really see some of the effort that goes into what they are doing at TRM, at Three Rivers Manufacturing. So, like our other TRMs, guys, there's not a thick pry bar in the bunch, but if you're looking for something that you want to cut, and you want it to cut like a laser beam, if you're opening letters, if you're opening packages, if you're cutting rope, if you're breaking down cardboard, these knives are little bangers, super slicey, super thin, super pokey. And my favorite USA manufacturer, definitely I think the USA manufacturer making the thinnest blades, some of my favorite folders. And as of not too long ago, they released their first fixie, which got me immensely excited. And they also were nice enough to let me check this out and give my thoughts on it, my objective thoughts, because if I saw issues with it, which the only feedback I gave them was, for me, this is the Redline fixed blade. They initially called it the Redline camp knife, but I think of it more of as all-purpose, larger EDC, hiking, camping knife, not just a camp knife. It could be a prep knife. It could be a game dressing knife. But it has this very wonderfully designed micarta handle with these G10 liners where you got the swell right here on the side, and you got this natural choil. So there's one grip on this knife. It's right here. But this swell and the tapered handle, along with this finger, I guess you'd call it grabber, make this knife just feel like an extension of the hand. My only request, and I said if I could have one thing that I changed about this knife, is I would like to see a Redline EDC. I.e., I'd like to see this knife, this handle, this blade shape, 20 CRV, shrunken down to a Javon size knife, maybe 7 inches overall. But guys, I love this knife. I carry it, but I only carry it when I'm hiking because it comes with a wonderful leather sheath, USA made. Carries vertically, so I can't really carry it as an EDC knife. But like I've kind of been giving them feedback, I would love to see this with a pocket dropper or some way. Look how slicey it is. Some way it could be just a fantastic replacement, maybe Shadow size, maybe the same size as our Shadow, but just in a fixed blade, not reinvented, but built on this platform. Because I think this platform, the way that the handle, the blade, the construction is done, is just wonderful. I love that knife. It's one of my favorite fixies. It has a great sheath. There's nothing to complain about on this sheath except it's a vertical carry sheath, right? So I could either get a sheath made for it, get a Kydex carrier, but it's kind of long, so it does make for a good pack knife, so the sheath does not bother me. Again, I'd love to see it smaller, but guys, TRM, if you're not familiar, check them out online. I'll leave a link. I'm not an affiliate. I'm just a fan, and I've just been from oogling, i.e. lusting after their knives, to obtaining my first one that I traded for with brother Mateo, and my subsequent building of my nest as I was collecting them and, picking them up along the way, because they drop. Some people will say they're real hard to get because they're a small batch manufacturer. But I think every Friday they drop a few on the site. They're getting ready to drop some Bulldogs in different color G10. I've seen that on their Instagram page. Follow them on Instagram. Check out their website. I'll leave it all in the description so that stuff will be easy to find. And again, they're not affiliate links. They're just their links because, again, they are my favorite USA company. And they are definitely, unless you can share with me someone who does it slicier, they are the sliciest. And Slicey is their game, in my opinion. And I appreciate them for that. So, guys, these are the Sliciest USA production knives that I'm aware of, or we'll definitely say that I'm collecting and I'm into. Guys, thank you for watching. If you're so inclined and you hadn't had a chance, please hit that subscribe button. Do me a favor. Look out for the guy or gal to your left. Look out for the guy or gal to your right. Look out for each other. Go forward with love in your hearts. Don't let today stress you out. If you watch this today when it's released, everything's good. Love each other based on your common threads that bind you together, right? Knives. Everything else, don't worry about that. And guys, choose debate, not hate. I love y'all. Peace.